We're for Joe because he's going to pay teachers what they deserve.
Brings people together, builds consensus, and makes real change.
I'm for Joe because he supports working out.
I'm with Joe because Joe is for all of us.
I'm with Joe because he's a champion for workers' issues.
I'm for Joe because he supports HBCUs.
Yo estoy con Joe porque yo sé que él es el líder que necesitamos ahora más que nunca.
We know what his values are. We know what he's done for this country, and we also know what he will do.
I'm for Joe because I know he'll look after every single person in this country.
I'm for Joe because he is the most capable and qualified candidate to restore the soul of our country.
I'm for Joe.
Welcome to this Biden-Harris campaign event. Minnesota Women for Biden virtual discussion with Senator Klobuchar and Cindy McCain. Please welcome Special Advisor to the Vice Chair, Rachel Wallace.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome Minnesota Women for Biden. We are just 13 days out from the final day that voters across the North Star State and, of course, the entire country are going to cast their ballots. So whether you are voting by mail, voting early in person, or voting on November 3rd, this is the time for all of us to be paying attention and getting involved. And that's because there is so much at stake for women this fall. And we know that women will play a critical role in organizing and mobilizing and ultimately charting a way forward for our country. So tonight, we are going to hear from two leaders about how Joe Biden is going to be a president for all of us, regardless of our party. How he's going to support veterans, how he's going to support women, how he's going to support working families, and how all of us can make a plan to vote and get involved in this last stretch of the campaign. So I'd love to dive right in and introduce our first guest. It is my honor to introduce U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar. She is the granddaughter of a miner. She is the daughter of a newspaperman and a teacher. And in 2007, she became the first woman elected to the Senate from the state of Minnesota. She is also a former candidate for president. Last year, Amy was named the most effective Democratic senator. She is a proven progressive who has a track record of getting things done to provide all Americans with an honest opportunity to get ahead. Senator, we are so glad you're here tonight. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Rachel. And I'm just excited to see my friend Cindy. I can't tell you how much it means to me that she did this event with us in Minnesota. Now, Cindy, I know you really want to be in Minnesota because it snowed yesterday, like several inches. I know.
No.
Do you remember when I went to Sedona, actually, when I went to Sedona for the international event that you and John would hold every year?
Yeah.
And it snowed in March when I was speaking, while I was speaking.
It not only snowed, it snowed sideways. It was great.
Well, so anyway, I thought, seriously, I'm in Arizona, I've got this cool speaking gig, and then it snowed. So Cindy and I have done a lot of work together, really good work. And on human trafficking, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But she is such an amazing person. And I think of it actually, and I know you're in Phoenix right now, but I think about you and John, and I think of that ranch. And I think about what I learned about your family. And all the scrapbooks everywhere of you guys and the neighbors, and what a great mom you are to all your kids, and what an incredible partner you were to John, including those last years. And we got to go and see John, as you know, at the end, and they were there with him every step of the way. And I just think people have got to understand that heart of Cindy McCain, as well as the strength, and why it means so much to have your endorsement for Joe Biden. So I want to thank you for that. We're pretty psyched about the election right now. We're 13 days away. There's so much enthusiasm in the middle of this horrific pandemic, we still have, I was driving on 35 in Minnesota over the weekend, and I saw people with big signs out on the bridges, and there's just a lot of excitement everywhere in our state, and people are voting like you wouldn't believe. So I have that to report to you, Cindy McCain, from the state of Minnesota. When I think about what's at stake here, we've been talking a lot here in the closing argument about the healthcare and how important that is in the pandemic. I always think about that moment because when John went out on the floor after he knew he had this cancer and this tumor that was most likely going to be fatal, he had to make that decision on how to vote on the Affordable Care Act. And I remember that moment when he went on the floor and he actually whispered to me how he was going to vote. But I'm like, I'm not going to tell anyone. And he went out there and he voted no to getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. And that was the mark of many moments of courage in his life. I think you know, Cindy, I got to stand out there in Vietnam, and I know you've been there too, but outside of that cell, where he had been held for so long, when he made that courageous decision to allow others to be released before him. And that's just his life and his strength. And I just know he's smiling at us right now. Now, he probably is saying, like he would do when I would be on the Sunday shows, especially early on, I'll never forget this. And Joe Biden would do stuff like this. John McCain would call me and he'd be like, okay, that was a pretty good argument you made there on immigration. Pretty good for a Democrat. And then he, and I was just thinking back to my swearing in, I think the second time I got elected, and we had a party, and both Joe and John, not together, but they both came and spoke. And oh, my in-laws were so excited. My parents were so excited. I remember that too. So back to the matter at hand here, and that is electing a president of decency and dignity. And I think, like me, you see that in Joe, and you see someone that understands that we've got to have a competent administration, yes, and stop all the mean stuff and all the divides, so we don't wake up in the morning and think, what's the new divide? What's the new mean tweet? I heard the president the other day talk about women in the suburbs and please like me or something like that. So I grew up in the suburbs, and I know a lot of my friends on the call here live in the suburbs. And I think what suburban women want, whether they're in Arizona or Minnesota or anywhere in this country, is they want an America that works as hard as they do. They want a president that's going to have their back if they're juggling their kids on their knee and their laptop on their desk, trying to get their work done, or they're trying to teach their first grader how to do the mute button just so they can be in school, or they've got parents that are in assisted living. And like I do, my dad is now 92, and I'll never forget that moment this summer when he had COVID and we were standing outside the glass door looking in, not knowing if it was going to be the last time we saw him. And he knew who we were, but he didn't understand what was going on. And for me, this whole thing has been personal. And having a president that gets that, and a vice president in Kamala, is going to be really important to me and so many others out there. So that's a lot about what we're talking about at the end. And John was so inextricably tied to that, and as were you. And the other thing I think about, I've been, of course, because I'm on the Judiciary Committee, thinking a lot about the loss of Justice Ginsburg. And one of the things that I went to her memorial service in the Capitol, and I know Cindy has been at things like this before, including for John. And the rabbi that spoke talked about how when Justice Ginsburg dissented, that her dissents were not cries of defeat. They were blueprints for the future. And that is how I think about this election and all the people that are voting right now. All those heroes out there, you know, that we've actually lost in the last year, whether it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or whether it's John Lewis, or whether it's Elijah Cummings, or whether it's John McCain's. Because Justice Ginsburg's dissents, those were blueprints for the future. John Lewis's footsteps across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, those were blueprints for the future. And John McCain's words on the Senate floor that day when he voted in favor of the Affordable Care Act to uphold it. Those were blueprints for the future, as was his whole life. And so it is just such an honor to have you here, Cindy. And the last thing I want people to know about Cindy as I turn it over to her, and then we'll take some questions, is what the work she has done on her own. And like I said, I've seen her as a wife, as a mom, and all of that. But I also saw her in the work she has done for some of the most vulnerable in our society, and that is people who have been victims of human trafficking, and including labor trafficking, by the way. And I went with her and Heidi Heitkamp to Mexico. I put this group together, a trip I will never forget. And the focus there, I remember we were in a shelter, and remember that, Cindy, you'll probably even remember the name of it, with some young women who had all been victims of human trafficking. And most of them had learned English, and they were talking to us about their experience. And then I remember one of them couldn't speak English, and there was an interpreter, and she was crying. She wouldn't stop crying. And it reminded me of what someone had said who I met at a refugee camp. And she said that what she had seen would make stones cry. And I thought, that's what that is. And Cindy, who could be doing anything with her life right now, has decided to devote herself to helping people that you don't see in the headlines. And I want to thank her for that. And I want to thank her for being there for John in such a loving way forever and in those last years. And I want to thank her for her incredible strength. And by the way, you guys, she's a lot of fun. I don't know if you can tell on a Zoom call. We can have some discussion of that as well. So last message, independents, Republicans, and Democrats, all out for Joe Biden. So whoever's on this call that hasn't made your mind up yet, listen to Cindy. I give you Cindy McCain.
Oh, Amy, you're so sweet. Gosh, when I first began in looking around in Washington to find allies with human trafficking, Amy's name came up first. And so I went to visit with her, and I thought, oh, she's a Democrat. She probably won't like me. But at least I'll try and all this. And we not only hit it off right away, but she was is such an amazing ally on this subject. And she, not only does she devote herself to the issues that she's involved in, but she's also extremely compassionate about it. And I think that's what's missing right now within the White House, certainly, and within what's going on within our government. Amy has brought such youth and vigor and fun to the Senate. Not that the Senate wasn't fun before, but it's more fun now. But more importantly, she brought with her bipartisan spirit and her willingness to work across the aisle to get things done, and not for her party or for her, but for the country. She did it for the right reasons and does it for the right reasons. And that's why, to me, Amy is just so special in everything that she does, and not only how she conducts herself, but how she treats others. And that's very important, because we see now a group in Washington that don't necessarily show compassion or show character or integrity or values. I'm missing that. And that's one of the reasons that I decided that I was going to support Joe Biden, because I know he has all of those qualities and much more. She mentioned the trip to Mexico that we took. It was fun. It was really, really fun. But boy, did we learn a lot. And now what's happened not just to the victims, but the people that we met, and the ongoing problem of human trafficking, is that it has exploded on the southern border because of the mishandling of these refugees and these people coming across the border. We now have camps full of just kids. We have cartels running in and out, trafficking children like wildfire. And then, of course, we have the 200 and some children whose parents they can't find. I mean, that's not the United States of America that I grew up in.
Yeah, and that's why that was in the news today.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. And so that's one of the reasons. I mean, every time I get frustrated, I'll text Amy and go, "Can you believe what's going on today?" kind of thing, because it every time you think it couldn't get much worse, it does. And so for me, I know people want to figure out why I would vote for a Democrat, number one. But I've known Joe Biden for over 40 years. And John and I, in fact, Jill Biden introduced John and me. So the first time I ever met my husband was because of Jill Biden. So through those years, I watched John and Joe work together, fight like cats and dogs, but always what came out of it was a bipartisan spirit and also friendship. It was for the good of the country, not the good of their party or for them personally. Amy reflects that in every way, and I'm just so excited that she's in the Senate. I guess if I may, the bottom line for me in supporting John, and I know Amy, or not supporting John, supporting Joe, pardon me, but I know Amy feels the same way, is the treatment of our troops. And, McCraven had a wonderful op-ed yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about his reason for supporting Joe Biden as a Republican and as a military general. And he was succinct with it. We've left our allies behind. We no longer lead. We are around the world. We're not looked upon with the esteem that we were looked upon before, and people look at us and see the incompetence of how we've handled issues, not just domestically but around the world. And boy, I'll tell you, with a Joe Biden presidency and an Amy Klobuchar in the Senate, it would be an amazing time in American history for sure. Bottom line for me is, if you see behind me, I have a flag that has 3 stars on it, 3 blue stars. I'm a blue star mother, as are the Bidens. They are a blue star family as well. And for someone to suggest that my sons and my daughter-in-law, who's represented on that flag, were somehow losers or suckers for serving in the military is mind-boggling to me. And that was the point that I decided that I couldn't go any farther. I had to get out and say something. I couldn't take it anymore. And so with the friendship of Amy and the guidance that she's always so good at helping me with, and our friendship, of course, to me, it's not only necessary to be here, but it's a great honor that I'm here to talk to all of you. And
your dog is really excited.
Oh, I know. This poor young man that's helping me is trying to wrangle I have 2 chihuahuas. They're trying to wrangle the chihuahuas right now.
It's great. Which I feel like we're in your living room, which we are. So
you are.
Well, Ms. McCain and Senator Klobuchar, thank you. I mean, it was just great hearing you talk about, I think, so many of the issues that really matter to folks and that are bringing people together in this very, broad and diverse coalition that we've been building. Bipartisanship, you've spoken a lot about that, and the need for that to take on issues like sex trafficking, right? We need to have those strong relationships. One of the things that we've been seeing a lot with this election is how badly working families have been hurt by Donald Trump's economic policies. So I'd love to talk a little bit with you about that. Joe Biden has made very clear if he's elected, he's going to create good paying jobs. He's going to cut taxes for working families. And he has been even more clear on the point that if you make less than $400,000, you are not going to pay a penny more in taxes under a Biden-Harris administration.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, can you talk a little bit about why Joe Biden's tax policies and economic policies are so important for hardworking families?
Sure. One of the things that, among many, and Cindy did such a good job of explaining, because it's so visceral to her, the foreign policy issues with this president. But the other thing about it is that he has seemed to me to be putting his own interests first instead of the American people. So, and it's kind of how he's run the country. So he did this, tax bill that basically was not good for our country overall. There were some good things in it, but most of it, a lot of it was very hurtful. to regular people. And now when the pandemic came, we were in a worse situation. And so what I love about Joe's policies is that, yes, he's going to focus on getting us through this pandemic immediately, but they're also about the day after tomorrow and the economy. And as you point out, the last thing that regular people need is the tax increase right now. And he's made it very clear he's not going to increase taxes on people making less than $400,000. But the other part of it is he's thinking about how he's going to build back better and put America in a better place economically. And that means things like job training, 1- and 2-year degrees, something he and I talked a lot about on the debate stage when we were debating each other, but we were still friends. And education investment, and making sure that we are smart about how we handle everything from immigration reform that we touched on to how we handle our tax code, and making sure that we are incubating startups and getting small businesses going. I think Yelp did a survey that we lose 800 a day right now during the pandemic. So I think it's the short term about getting through the pandemic, and then it's also the long term with thinking about the underpinnings for the economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know what? We're on a Minnesota Women for Biden call. We have hundreds of women on the line right now, and I think everybody knows women are going to make the difference in this election. But I would love to hear from both of you. What is your message to women of all political stripes about why they should get involved and make their voices heard?
You go first, Cindy.
It's for obvious reasons. It is women that, in my opinion, that bind this country together. It is women that raise our children. It is women, for the most part, that drive the economy in many ways. Women are a very important part of this. And for anyone and women also care about healthcare. They care about foreign policy because it directly affects their children if they should have to or do serve in the military. Women are succinct and a very important part of this, and to overlook anything that we should happen to think that is important is it just isn't right. Joe Biden not only cares about he'll be a president for all America, but he cares deeply about families and about not only our children but our children's education, the things that we care about. He cares about. And I'm a grandmother now, and I sometimes worry about what kind of a country if we don't change our president, what kind of a country we're going to leave to my grandchildren. It's just not, to me, it's not only frustrating, but it's something that just drives me to do what I'm doing here. And I think most women on this call, at least I would hope some of you that perhaps maybe haven't made up your mind or aren't sure, I hope you'll follow me and step across the aisle and vote for Joe Biden, because there's more at stake than just the party things that we look at. This is a very serious time for us, and not only with COVID, but of course with foreign policy, et cetera, as I mentioned. And I hope women follow me across the aisle and vote for Joe.
Not much to add to that, except that, but as they say in the Senate, as you know, Cindy, everything's been said, but I haven't said it. That is that, I'd say, first of all, he has a woman running mate, and we have our chance of having the first woman vice president. And I think, as I said once on the debate stage, if it was so easy for women to get in those kinds of positions, we could play a game right now called Name Your Favorite Woman President or Name Your Favorite Woman Vice President, and we can't because there hasn't been one. So that's a pretty significant fact. Then you have the Joe's work on for women over the years, the Domestic Violence Bill, Violence Against Women Act, so important. And for Minnesotans on the call, as you know, Paul and Sheila Wellstone, they worked on that really hard with Joe, and so that's a really important thing in our state. The work economically with childcare, and it's not just in the cities and the suburbs. We have huge, which I know you have in Arizona, we have childcare deserts in rural areas where we don't have enough childcare. And Joe has been really focused on making that a priority, and it's got to be part of our of our comeback, making sure that we treat women fairly in the workplace with the laws that we put in place. And then reproductive rights. I mean, you could just go through the list. But I think the big thing that overlooks down on all of it with a big magnifying glass is treating people with respect. And talking to a lot of women, especially Republican women, after that debate where Donald Trump interrupted Chris Wallace, the moderator, 145 times and was just stepping over everything and yelling at things. And then we find out he has COVID, whole nother story. But the fact that he can be that rude, really, and not civil, I think we need civility back again in our politics. And I think that's really important to a lot of women and a lot of men and people who are raising their kids. They want to be able to have their kids watch the president on TV, even if they don't agree with everything right. he says. They don't want to turn the volume down every time the president comes up.
Mm-hmm. You are exactly right with that. And I actually had a mother complain about just that. She felt she had to turn everything down because it was so hostile and so rude and actually quite vile too. Mm-hmm. You mentioned civility and common ground and the things that you mentioned, in what you just said. It starts at the top, and not only does it affect our government the way it does, but it also will affect our children. Our children learn from that. So in my idea, is it better to have your child learn from our president now, or someone who actually does practice civility and decency and honor? I do know that Joe Biden lives by the code of conduct, and that's duty, honor, and country. And that's, to him, that's an important element in who he is and what his values are.
You know what I was just thinking about, Cindy? It was John, when right near the end of the presidential campaign, that was hard when, that moment when you got against Barack Obama. I'm not going to bring up the whole thing.
No.
I remember when he was in Minnesota, and this woman in Lakeland, Minnesota, went after Barack Obama in a very vile way. And can you imagine if it was Donald Trump? He would be. But instead, John McCain said, right when he's running against him, the election's right around the corner, and he says, no, ma'am. No, he's a family man. He's a good man.
Good and decent man, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that matters to people. And as we get the issues are so important, the economy, the pandemic, but over all of it is what kind of country we want to be.
Right.
And America will look like.
Right. You mentioned the pandemic again. We all mentioned the pandemic. It's pandemic 24/7. But what I respect and love about Joe is of course he has a plan for this. He has a plan. He's listening to the scientists. He's doing exactly what a president should be doing. Hopefully a president, if he wins, doing, and that is making a plan, figuring out what's best for America and how we can solve this problem. And instead, on the other side, we have smoke and mirrors on whether or not it's even real. To me, that's very frightening as a mother and a grandmother, and it's also very frightening to watch a lot of people believe what he's actually saying. I want people to know that Joe Biden will always be honest. He'll always tell them the truth. You may not like what he says, but he'll tell you the truth. And he's a decent, honorable man, and I think that's most important right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Mrs. McCain. Senator Klobuchar. My sister serves in the Navy, and when I told her about this call, she met Senator McCain while in her time of service, and she said, tell Mrs. McCain that we miss her husband because we need more leaders like that. And I think that both of your comments tonight just really illustrate the kind of leadership that we are all looking for, which is very much in the vein of Senator John McCain. So thank you both for being here tonight.
A little McCain trivia before we go.
Oh, yeah.
My son Jack McCain just was promoted to lieutenant commander today. So he's obviously in the Navy too as a pilot. So we're very excited.
That's amazing. So, all right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to see you in person.
Me too.
Anyway, all right.
Thank you. Thank you to you both. All right, folks, we have 13 days to go. And to wrap up this event, we are going to leave you with the 3 things that we all need to do.